What's going on, guys? Good morning, good afternoon, however you're listening. This is Dr. Andrew Fix, and thank you for joining me again on the code. Very excited. We're bringing another awesome interview to you guys, and I think anyone that's listening to this, whether you're a male, a female, whether you have kids, you don't have kids, but especially if you do, I think you're going to be able to relate to this conversation. And we've got Dimity McDowell joining us. She's been a client of ours at Physio Room, and she and a partner, Sarah Bowen Shea, they are the co-founders of a site and a platform called Another Mother Runner. And it's a community that inspires and fosters and entertains other women runners through training programs. They are also podcasters. And she's also been the author of a book, Run Like a Mother: How to Get Moving and Not Lose Your Family, Job, or Sanity. And that's what we're going to keep this conversation sort of focused on today: how to balance and manage the crazy, hectic life that we all have. So, Dimity, thank you so much for joining me today. Really appreciate your time.
I'm so excited to be here, Andrew. It's going to be a fun conversation.
Yeah, I think so. And it's not every day that I have the opportunity to talk to someone else who also is involved in doing podcasts and having these kind of conversations. So this will be fun. And well, what I would love to do is just give you an opportunity, if you could, for our listeners, just more thoroughly introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you. And then maybe we can parlay that into, like, how did you and Sarah come to the idea to start this Another Mother Runner community? Where did this book come from? And then we'll get into hitting some of the highlights of what that book's about.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I live here in Denver. As you said, I'm a client of the Physio Room. I have two kids that are now 20 and almost 21 and almost 18. And so we're going to be flashing back for me. I know you're in the thick of having a young one, and I'm excited to kind of go back to those days. I have been an endurance athlete most of my life. I discovered rowing in college. I was on a club team and then kind of parlayed that into trying to make an Olympic team, which didn't work out, but taught me a lot about training and mental limits and kind of what I like to do, which is to get endorphins flowing through my system. So after that, I ran a lot. I did a couple marathons. I
Mhm.
really like triathlon. I like to swim and bike a lot. And yeah, and then I've started weight training recently, back seriously, and not just as a complement to sports, but I'm in my low 50s, I would say, and trying to, keep my muscle mass for as long as I can.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Um, so I guess my first question for you, just since you just brought it up, and then we can move on, is we talk about strength training with endurance sport athletes so often in our clinic, or just, personal trainers do. And I find that it's often a thing that's missing, right? People
Yes.
that are
Yep.
very serious about endurance sports a lot of times do not find or make the time for strength training, or maybe they don't understand, like, why they should be strength training. Maybe they've never done it. They've might be someone who's never really dealt with a serious injury. But what has your experience been with strength training as it relates to sort of complementing your endurance sports? And, what would you say on that?
I mean, you hit it right in that, it often comes last, and the reason why is because we love to run, right? We love to be outside in the fresh air, we love the endorphins, we love the forward movement, and it's not fun to come home and be like, "Okay, now I've gotta do a weight training." I mean, it doesn't have to be weight, it can just be, I mean, I'm talking body weight, like planks, glute bridges, single leg
Yeah.
things, you're sitting there, what we're going to talk about a lot is time management.
Yeah.
And, if you have 45 minutes, are you going to want to come home at 30 and spend 15 doing stuff while often when you come home to do strength training, you are, if your kids are young, you don't get to do what you even planned to do, right? All of a sudden they're at your shins wanting to be picked up, or, you've got to empty the dishwasher, or you've got to sign a note or whatever. And all of a sudden your best intentions go out the window. So, that's kind of a little bit of a byway to that. But I think it's one of those things where you don't know you need it until you absolutely know you need it. And that's when injury hits, right? And you realize, oh, my pelvis is unbalanced. Oh, my hips can't carry the load of the impact of running. Oh, my glutes don't work. And all of a sudden you're like, how do I fix this? And usually you're kind of in a hole so deep that once you get out, you realize that I should integrate strength training. But yeah, it's often a number two.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I'm sort of right there with you. I have been, I would say, over the past couple years, due to my own physical ailments, particularly my Achilles, much more involved in strength training without as much of the longer endurance stuff as I used to do. But yeah, it's very hard to replicate that feeling, that mental feeling of like going out for a run, right? And it's hard to accomplish something that feels similar in the gym or in your living room while watching a strength training video or something. Like it just
Oh
doesn't
yeah.
really compare. And personally, I haven't even found the same feeling getting on the bike or something like that as I do with running. Running just feels different to me. And I tend to be somebody who runs usually without music and all this stuff. Like I just want to be outside. And but then being a physical therapist and doing what I do, how I try a lot of times to like I guess get through to people and like communicate this is yes, we can talk about strength training being part of an injury prevention or injury management, but I always try to come at this for most people from the performance angle, right? And how strength training will make you faster, will make you have the capacity or give you the capacity to tolerate more of the
Hmm.
other training that you really want to be doing, right? It's like if you want to run 5, 6, 7 days a week, doing strength training is going to help build a nice robust body to be able to tolerate that. So because a lot of times I find that people don't, I don't know, really resonate with or care that much about the injury prevention if they've not already sustained an injury, right? If they're not already hurt, they're like, well, I'm not hurt. Why do I need to do that? But most people want to get faster or run more or run longer or whatever that might be. So yeah, well, I just appreciate you bringing that up because it's just a part of the puzzle, right? It's just a
It
piece of the
is.
puzzle.
Well,
So
what you have to do, I mean, one of the things that we often say around another mother runner is just like, okay, what can you do? Can you do like 5 minutes while your pasta is boiling? Like we have women that keep their resistance bands in the kitchen, right? And do their little like monster walks and all that kind of stuff. I mean, because there is, certainly it's not an hour, at the gym in the squat rack, but it's something that can at least feel like you're doing something positive and you're not just letting it be, right? So trying to break it up as much as you can, I think, especially when you do have limited time is so important.
yeah, totally. Well, you had mentioned you've got 2 kids. I now have 1. Yours have grown
Mhm.
up. Mine is 7 weeks old as of
I
the recording of
know.
this. And, you've been through the experience of all the stuff that my wife and I are going through now. And both of us are we like to frequent the gym, we like to exercise, we like to be active, and we're starting to really see the impact that having a tiny human that you're responsible for and caring for has on your time management, like you mentioned, or just like on how you structure your day. So, like, she was able to sneak out for an appointment for herself while I was with Aiden this morning. But where did the idea for you and Sarah have written now a couple books, 3 books.
Yeah.
Like, where did the idea for writing and authoring this book come from? Like, when was that? And let's walk through that a little bit.
Sure, sure. Well, so Sarah and I were both sports and fitness writers prior to Run Like a Mother coming out. So we, this is pre-internet days. So we wrote a lot for magazines. I used to do, gear reviews, and I got to cover the Women's World Cup in 1999, and really cool, fun assignments. And we were both at the way that Run Like a Mother came about was we were both contributing editors at Runner's World magazine, and, my kids were little and Sarah has 3 kids, and they were all little too. Everyone was under 5. And I had some postpartum depression with my first child,
Mhm,
who was a girl, and so I decided I did not want that to happen again. It was such an unfun experience. Of course, it's unfun, it's depression, but, I really wanted to prevent that or try to prevent that from happening again with, my 2nd kid.
mhm,
And so I was like, "What can I do so that I don't go back into that scary dark hole?" And I know from knowing myself and psychology that having a goal is really important. So I'm like, I'm going to run a marathon. After I have the second child, I'm going to run a marathon, which, it was a little bit of a leap. It could have been a 10K or a half marathon, but I wanted to run a marathon, and so I was like, "Who can I ask that will not say no?" Because if anyone would have said, "No, are you crazy?" I would have been like, "Yep, yep, you're right. That's not a good call." So Sarah, my friend that I knew from, working with her, I asked her, and because I kind of knew she would say yes. So she said yes. We ended up running the Nike Women's Marathon, which isn't around anymore, although Nike is bringing back its women's race series. So that's kind of
Cool.
interesting. But
Yeah.
anyway, it's the Nike Marathon. It was in San Francisco. We ran it in 2007. And we trained for it. And we did a blog on Runner's World. Again, this was probably, you were probably still in high school, Andrew, but
Yeah.
blogs were kind of new and the hot thing then. And so we were dubbed the Marathon Moms, and we wrote about, how we fit in our training, how we, ate, how we dealt with occasionally unsupportive husbands, right? Why we were doing this whole thing. And we wrote a feature about it for Runner's World that came out the next year. And that turned into a book. So that's how it all happened. So this Marathon Moms feature in Runner's World turned into Run Like a Mother, how to get moving and not lose your family, job, or sanity. And part of the reason why it turned into a book was because we were coming at running from a very different angle. Like you mentioned performance before, and certainly I'm not going to lie, performance matters in
Mhm.
running. I mean, the numbers are so tangible. And even, there's like, going under 4.5 marathon, in a marathon, or going under 2.5 marathon,
Yeah.
or Boston qualifying, all that stuff, splits, distance, it's all numbers driven. But you said sometimes you just want to go out and be in the fresh air. And women were coming at it from, wanting to beat depression. That's a huge thing. Wanting to lose baby weight, wanting to hang out with their friends. I
Yeah.
mean, we call like 5 a.m. happy hour instead of 5 p.m. happy hour because
Nice.
that's when you can go and have an uninterrupted conversation with your friends. Doesn't
Mhm.
happen when you have toddlers running around.
Right.
So all these reasons, and just, to feel like they had a sense of agency, that they were something besides a mom or a worker or a sister or a daughter or whatever. They were like, I'm a runner, and that's for me. So we came at it from a very holistic angle, which
Mhm.
again, now, I mean, I know like self-care and all this kind of stuff is very prevalent now, and I love it. But at the time, running felt like it was still like to me, which I've never podiumed in a race. I'm not like a runner. I didn't run in high school or anything like that. So I am not a talented runner in that if I finish in like the top 30%, I'm feeling like I won the race, right? So to me, it was about this like very much a self-care act.
Yeah.
And running to me at that time felt like it was like still the realm of like really skinny guys in split shorts at the track,
Yeah.
who had to, who were doing their drills prior and just, living and dying by running.
Mhm.
And not a suburban house mom who was out kind of loving her 9-minute miles.
Well, and if you really boil it down, right? Like no matter who the person is, what their skill or talent level is in a sport or activity, that's the most important part about all of it. It's, you're doing it from a holistic, like health and wellness kind of angle should be like at the core of why we're doing this in the first place. Why do
Sure,
people go to the gym? Why do people eat a certain way? It's to take care of ourselves at the end of the day. And there's many ways we can do that, whether we're talking about physically and, how we look and feel, mentally and emotionally, how we feel, and the self-talk that we have. One of the things that you said that really stuck out to me was, you wanted to make sure you didn't have this same like postpartum depression feeling after your second child as you experienced the first time around. So you gave yourself a goal, because I'm the
yeah,
same way. Like if I don't have something that I'm working towards, it makes the motivation every single day to do the things, the training, that much harder. Because it's like, well, what am I doing this for? Am I doing this for
yeah,
anything in particular, or am I just doing this to do it and go through the motions? And when you have something that you're working for or towards, I feel like it allows you the opportunity to enjoy the journey a little bit more because you're actually
sure,
going towards something. But you said, who can I ask, to like do this with me or support me in this that's not going to say no? And I
yeah,
think that is so important to have like one, whether it's an accountability person, or two, just like a support system around you that is going to support what it is you want to do. Because if everyone around you is telling you how crazy that decision is,
yeah,
or are you crazy? How are you going to fit this in? You don't have time to do that. Or, you just had a baby. How do you think about running a marathon? Like, if everyone's saying that, it would be pretty hard to just block all that noise out and train for it and do it anyway. So I think it's so cool that you were like, who can I ask? They're going to say yes and they're going to join me in on this.
We're gonna commit. Yeah, yeah. And that's, I mean, Sarah lived in Portland, Oregon. I was in Colorado Springs at the time. And then, I mean, I recruited a friend of mine to do it with me. She
Mhm.
also had young kids. And then my sister, also named Sarah, who lived up here in Denver, said, I want to go. I mean, the Nike Women's Marathon was kind of it is a cool thing. It was a
Yeah.
cool thing back then. I mean, you got a Tiffany necklace instead of a medal at the end.
Okay.
It was handed to you by a firefighter. It was kind of,
Cool.
it was a fun tour of the city. Yeah, that was really important. And then, getting up again, like the postpartum, the goal is really important. And also like the reason to get out of bed, which I
Yeah.
guess you kind of said, but like I knew that I was meeting Catherine, who was my friend in Colorado Springs. We would meet at, 5:30, whatever, 6, whatever we had to do, and run, right? And so like immediately, like I would not get out of bed for myself, but I would get out of bed to meet Catherine
Totally.
and go laugh and cover some miles,
Mhm.
So that was, I mean, that, I look back now, I didn't appreciate it at the time, but I look back now and I was like, gosh, what a great combination that I had. And then, to go celebrate in San Francisco together is, we view the race as like a celebration instead of a thing that we worried about our time so much.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And, we could kind of get into the conversation about like, are you using an external motivator or an internal motivation? And sometimes you have that external motivation, that friend, that person that like, it's easier for me to get out of bed to go meet them than it is just to do it for myself. But sometimes you do that enough and that starts to turn into an internal, intrinsic kind of
For
motivation.
sure. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Start feeling the benefits of it or you start seeing the benefits of it, other people around you start seeing the benefits of it because we know when we exercise, when we take care of ourselves, it changes from a biochemistry standpoint, like what's going on in our body and our mood and our emotion and everything. And sometimes just getting moving is the best way to do that. um and I just finished watching maybe a couple days ago on Netflix the U.S. Women's National Team 2023 World Cup documentary
Yeah.
about, I think it's called Under Pressure, and they talked a little bit about the 1999 Women's World Cup. So that is pretty sweet to hear that you were there, sort of covering that event. That is awesome.
Yeah. It was again, when I look back, I was like, oh, that was so cool. But at the time, I mean, I loved it. Don't get me wrong, but I wasn't a soccer fan.
Yeah.
So it was hard for me to, but it was really great. I mean, I remember Brandy ripping her shirt off. I got to go to their preseason camp and like interview them all. I worked,
Cool.
at the time, I worked at, it was Sports Illustrated for Women, which was
Yeah.
around for probably about 3 years before it folded. So I got to go do a full thing on that. And now I see like Julie Foudy or Brandy Chastain on television. I'm like, oh, I knew her.
Yeah. Totally.
But I love to see them still out there encouraging women. And I mean, the women's sports thing, that soccer documentary was awesome. The Final Four was just awesome. I mean,
Yeah. Totally.
it's a charge that I hope will just continue to get stronger and stronger.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I'm right there with you because we plan to have more kids and who knows, we might have a daughter and we're gonna want her to
Yeah.
do anything she wants to be able to do. So
Yeah.
uh, well, let's start to talk about that book a little bit, and not just the book, but like, the women and the community that you're working with now and that you're a part of now. Like, what are the things that you're finding with the people that you're talking to and that you experienced yourself? We mentioned time management. Well, like, what
Hmm.
are the things that you're finding people are struggling with the most when it comes to, I've gotten pregnant, I've become a mom,
Hmm.
and I'm still trying to be my own person and, not lose my
Yeah.
family job and sanity.
Yeah.
But now they have a child or two or
Yeah.
three or four.
Yeah. I mean, it does come down a lot to, well, it comes down to two things, I think. One is mentality. I often say like good enough is good enough. Most runners that I know are very type A, right? Like especially, and GPSs have amplified that. So, it's like, okay, well, my training plan says 6 miles, and I only have 4.70, right now. I need to go another 1.3, but I've got to get
Uh-huh.
home to do this. And you're like, you know what? That was the spirit of the workout. You did the intervals or whatever you needed to do. do a cool down, call it good enough, right? So I think losing that mentality a little bit, maybe taking rest days because as you know, like sleep can be hard to come by at times, more rest days than you think you might have needed before you had kids. It's really hard because again, like endurance athletes and runners like a strict schedule, like the repetition, like the crispness of it all. And you throw a kid in the mix and nothing's crisp anymore, right? Because you were planning it to get up at 5:30 for a 6 a.m. run, and all of a sudden you were up three times in the night and you don't want to get up, so you've got to like give yourself grace there and either do it later in the day or say, okay, you know what, tomorrow's a new day. I can do this tomorrow. So that's one thing. And then the second thing I think is really being very strategic with your goals, right? I'm not saying you have to give up your goals because I totally am a proponent of people going for big things and trying and pushing out of their comfort zone. But you also have to think about like what else is going on in your world. Like if your husband is getting a new job, that's probably going to be a stressful time in your life, not the time to train for a marathon. If you're moving into a new house, if you are going through a divorce, like anything like that kind of requires extra energy, I think is important to say, okay, I'm just going to maintain what I've got here. I'm going to run and keep my miles up at whatever mileage you want per week and do the strength training we talked about. The other thing, I mean, you and your wife are both really active, as are my husband and I,
Yeah.
and we kind of traded off,
Yeah.
right? So like I did I would go do something and then he would go do something. And so something meaning like, I have a training block that's 12 to 16 weeks that requires me to be, have a big chunk of time on the weekend, right? So that's the biggest thing is, I mean, when you do go for a bigger endurance goal, or I imagine even like a strength training goal too, you're going to need time and you need time to prepare for it. Like on a Saturday morning, like eat, get ready for the run, go out for the run. That's 2 to 3 hours. You come home, you're kind of tired, and yet sometimes you just got to shower and just go and head to the soccer field or whatever else you need to do.
Yeah.
So planning is important there, like making sure you've got easy nutrition, making sure that, maybe you're building in rest time later in the day, all the things. So I think two things, again, like the mentality is really important. And then kind of just the logistics are important.
Yeah. I think you're totally right, especially on so many runners, people that we work with tend to be that type A personality. I definitely fall into that.
Yeah.
And I was just answering this question for someone the other day. They had, everyone's asking me since it's so new, oh, how's dad life and all this stuff. And how I've typically been answering that question is along that mindset or mentality side of things, where it definitely causes or has forced a shift in my mentality or in my mindset that like stuff is just going to get done when it gets done. And
Yeah.
I'm so used to in my life up to this point being someone who like I have this list, I get it done, or I have a schedule, I get it done. And now, we've had dry clothes sitting in the dryer for 3 days that haven't been folded because we just haven't had the opportunity to like set things down, retumble
Yeah.
them, and go fold the laundry. So,
Well, at least they're
okay,
not still in the washer,
yeah,
right?
that's
They could
right.
be
Yeah,
moldy now. So like at least they're in the dryer.
totally. So we'll get it done when we get it done. But what I've noticed is like if I go into the day with the expectation that all of these things are going to happen and then they don't happen for various reasons, I mentally feel very different than if I go into the day with just this mentality of, hey, I'm going to do the best that I can. I'm going to get as many things done as I can, and whatever doesn't get done, we'll tackle that the next day or the next week or whatever.
Yeah.
And if I go into the day with that different expectation and don't like hold myself to a standard of like all of this has to get done, otherwise the day's a failure, I feel very different at the end of the day, regardless of what the outcome is, like
Sure.
whether those things got done or not. And it's the same thing I feel like when we're driving, right? It's getting very more populated here in Denver. People like
Yeah.
me moving into town. Um, if I'm driving and I'm in a hurry, I get more frustrated by little slowdowns. But if I'm not in a hurry to get where I'm going and there's a slowdown, it's not that big of a deal, right? It's not the end of the world because you're not like so stressed or pressed for time to begin with. And
Yeah.
it's just the mentality or like the same activities and obstacles could come your way, but how you mentally tackle them is very different.
100%. And then I would add the PS to that. If you can get up, and I've talked about 5 a.m. number of
Yeah.
times because getting a morning workout, is worth the weight of gold in my mind. Like, I just feel like if you can start the day taking care of yourself, and it could be, it could be strength training, it could be riding a bike, it could be Peloton, it could be running, whatever. If you can start the day like with quiet and what you need and what makes you feel good, like the rest of the day is just a downhill coast. And if the rest of the day goes completely bonkers and nothing, you don't get anything else done on your to-do list, you still feel good because you got that workout in. Like, I don't know if there's probably like a psychological term for it, but I just like like I almost see it like a little badge on my heart, like,
Mm.
hey, I did this thing today. No one else may know that I did it, and everything else around me is exploding, but I took care of myself, and and as such, I can handle the other things with more grace and more patience.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then even from just like an exercise consistency and training standpoint, what we know from a statistics standpoint is that people that exercise in the morning
Mm,
are the most consistent exercisers, the ones that stick with it the longest, the ones that reach and fulfill their goals and everything, because you could have a terrible night of sleep and you could be up breastfeeding or something numerous times or whatever that is, but if you get the workout done in the morning, then the other things and the shit that hits the fan all throughout the rest of the day can't take away the fact that you did that, right?
yeah, exactly,
Whereas,
exactly.
if I plan to work out at 5 p.m. and then a bunch of crazy stuff happens at noon, well, I'm probably going to skip that workout because that other thing is going to be more priority at that moment. But if I was able to do it at 5:30 in the morning, well, then you can still handle that obstacle later in the day. So, yeah, absolutely. And I used to be that person, the like totally morning workout one. I'm not as much anymore, only because I block it into my day with clients because I have
Sure.
the opportunity to work in a gym. But if I did not do that, like if I worked in an office setting or something, I would 100% be hitting the gym or going for a run before I go to the office every single day, without a doubt, to do what you just said.
Yeah, yeah. It is. It's so important, and it's so hard. Like, it also needs to be acknowledged that it is so hard. There are days where you're just like, I mean, the good news is as your kids get older, they can take care of themselves. So now, like, an early morning workout for me is 6:30 instead of 5:30.
Yeah.
And but I still have that battle with myself, like one devil on my shoulder, one angel on my shoulder. You don't need this Dimity. You can do it later. You don't need to get up. And every time you never regret getting up. It is hard though. It is hard. And so don't, we make it sound like, oh, it's just fine. Like, put it in your schedule and get it done. And it's like every day. Don't, I mean, another phrase that we say a lot around another mother runner is don't think, just go. Like, don't give yourself the chance to talk yourself out of it. Like, when your kids are, yelling mom and you want to go for a run, you go, provided you got someone
Yeah, of
taking
course,
care of
right?
them at home. But the less you think about it, the more you're going to be just get it, just go on autopilot, and you'll come back and you're just going to be so much more positioned to have a better day, to be more patient, to be more kind, loving, all the things, focused, all the things that we want to be.
Yeah, Aaron and I are finding that now. Like, even though we're only 7 weeks in, like I
Yeah.
mentioned, we're finding that now that if each of us can at least have a little bit of that time to ourself in the day, it allows us to mentally recharge our battery to be able to
Yeah.
handle the other things. And we've been trying, particularly on the weekends, to do the sort of trading off, right? Like
Yeah.
you mentioned,
Yeah.
like she'll go to the gym, I'll be with Aiden, and then I'll go to the gym or whatever. And we're in the phase right now where we have a lot of family coming into town to see the new baby. So we are totally trying to take advantage of, oh, hey, mom or baby's grandma, like, can you
Oh,
watch him? I'm going to go to yoga class or whatever that is. And of course, they want to do it, right? So we're totally trying to take advantage of that. We had a little date night last night, went out to
oh,
dinner.
good.
So, what I would love for you to talk on for a moment is just and I would imagine, of course, I've only had this experience now. I haven't had the experience of what it was like to be a parent before COVID versus after COVID.
Sure.
But what I do feel is I think it's even more important now in 2024 that, like, with our world going so technology based and
Yeah.
social media being such a thing, like how important it is for us to have a in-person community that we are a part of that is not our work, that is not our household, but it's just like another group of individuals that I associate with, whether that's friends or it's a running group or it's a book club or whatever that is, like something for you to do and have and be a part of that is your own.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned that, you and Sarah or other friends like in the group, sometimes there's an unsupportive spouse and you have
Yeah.
things that you want to do, and it's not always easy if the other person's not supporting you. Could you just talk on like what you have found, like the benefit of just having that support group or that
Mhm.
community that you're a part of that
Oh,
is
it's
not social
important.
media and whatnot?
Oh, it's so important. I mean, what do they call it? The third room or something like that? Third place, I think is what it's called
Yeah.
maybe. Where it is not work, it's not home, but it's a place where it's cheers, right? It's I don't know, again, like probably dating myself, but it's the bar cheers.
Mhm.
Where everybody knows your name. And for me, like that was a running group back in the day, right? When our kids were littler, if you live in a neighborhood and you see some moms out running in the morning, like awesome. And the other thing is, sometimes I know that those women can be intimidating and that like, I want to join them. How do I join them? If you're listening, I will tell you, like we've had people, like we have a great story about one woman who literally like turned her car around. She saw it was in St. Paul. She saw like three or four women running together. She was a runner. She turned her crown around. She said, "I want to join you guys. Can I join you guys?" and she now they're like best friends, right?
Yes.
Or the other thing too is you can start one yourself. I find that pace is not such an important thing as just simply companionship, right? So like, we had women in our neighborhood are like, "Oh, I can't go with you. I do a run walk." I'm like, "I'll do a run walk. I don't care." Like I just want to get out and move forward and talk to friends.
Yeah.
So that community is really important. People that you kind of know have your back and want the best for you. And there's like no strings attached there either, which is so nice. Like I said, running is kind of crisp, like you meet, you go walk through the problems that you guys are going through. There's something very intimate, I think, about that. Like there are times, I mean, I think back, I wrote in the book, I can't remember if it was that one or Train Like a Mother, but I met a friend that in Colorado Springs that I'd kind of known but didn't really had never run with her. And I went for a run with her. And within like 2 miles, we were talking about, our kids, our husbands, and not in necessarily a bad way, but there are things that you can talk about when you're out on the road, kind of
Yeah.
your eyes just looking forward that you don't necessarily talk about if I'm sitting across from you having a cup of coffee,
Mhm.
right? That is like a lovely, lovely thing about that kind of community. And then like finding it again. I mean, this is how important it was to me. So I don't run anymore. My body kind of I was told in 2017 by an orthopedic surgeon that I should probably stop running. And I finally stopped in 2020. So that's how long it took me to finally wane off. And then the COVID hit, as you talked about, and I was working out by myself in my house. I mean, I have a indoor trainer down in the basement. I ride my bike a lot. I was
Yeah.
strength training in our basement. And that was fine. I mean, I was keeping fit, but oh my gosh, I miss people so much,
Mhm.
and that's when I came to Lion's Den, which is where Physio Room is, the location I am. And I don't know. I mean, I know the names of a lot of people. I don't know much about their stories, but I just love that we show up at a specific time, we do a great workout, and we leave. And that is just like having the accountability of having somewhere to show up, having someone else set the workout, not being on your phone, not worrying about, who's texting you is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And prior to being in that facility, I was never much of a group workout person, I would say, like a group class workout
Yeah.
person. I played football and track in college, and I was typically working out with my teammates there. But then
Yeah.
after those days ended, I was usually the person I was going to the gym by myself in the morning. Now, I wasn't the only one there, right? But I
Of
was the only
course.
one doing the workout that I'm doing. And I was just, making that up on my own. And then that's what I was doing also when I got out of physical therapy school, as I was going to the gym by myself. But those were typically the bigger box gym. There's other
Yeah.
people around. And even though you're not working out with someone else, there still would be other people that you randomly get into conversations with or randomly pick up a little pickup basketball game or something. And there's other people around.
Yeah.
I've always really struggled with like just plain old working out by myself, like in my house or in my
Sure.
area, like if I can't go to a different place or like cross the line mentally, like I step across this imaginary line and now I'm in my zone where I'm going to work out and I'm going to let all the other stressors and problems just wait until I'm done. Uh,
Yeah.
that's always been something that's hard for me. Like I don't want to just like lay a yoga mat down in our living room and do a workout there when all the other stuff is going on around me.
Yeah.
Because yeah, it's just something about it from a mentality standpoint. But then now, primarily being in the group strength training class setting, like you sort of mentioned, I absolutely love, like, I do everything I can in my weekly schedule to make sure that my workout times match one of the class times. And I
Yeah.
bounce around a lot, but it is so much more fun for me to interact and push myself with other people
Yeah.
than do it by myself at 2 in the afternoon when it's quiet in the gym. I would much rather be in one of those class periods. So I think it's a huge, huge resource, honestly.
It is, and I mean, the other thing too is that sometimes you have to adapt. Like you said, you don't wanna put a yoga mat down in your living room, and, one day you might just have to do that, right?
Totally.
Because Aiden is, like, crawling around and you can't get out, and you're like, "Okay, well, it's this or nothing."
Yeah.
Or, I mean, a lot of women in our community have treadmills in their basement because, it's early morning, they wanna get up, they may not feel safe, or they wanna, just get it done, they enjoy the treadmill.
Yep.
I mean, there's definitely I appreciate, like, I absolutely appreciate that, and I love the crispness again of it, love, like, going somewhere and having it, but again, like, what can be good enough sometimes? But I agree with you. I mean, it's so nice to have someone else set the workout. I think at times you're gonna push yourself harder, but it's also like you have obviously have a great knowledge of exercise and what to do, but I know a lot of our women are like, they go to the gym and they're just like, intimidated or not sure what to do. So they end up, hitting the treadmill, but not taking advantage of the weights or something like that.
Yeah.
So,
Totally.
yeah,
Well, even I totally resonate with what you just said. Even I really enjoy and appreciate having somebody else decide what the workout is for
yeah,
me. And that
yeah,
doesn't happen 7 days out of the week, but it does on the days that I do the strength training over there at the
yeah.
gym. Because whether or not I know how to do it, it's still just several mentally taxing decisions that I don't have to make, right? And
Yep.
it's I can show up and just do something. Like you said, don't think, just go, just do
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah.
I love that part of it where I just look at the whiteboard, I do what's there. I don't have to be the one making the decisions because even though they're not maybe the most grand decisions in the world, well, those things might wane on your willpower later in the day when,
Oh,
like,
for sure.
something's mentally taxing you that normally wouldn't if you didn't have to do all those other small decisions throughout the day.
Oh, yeah. I mean, decision fatigue, I believe in it 100%. I mean, I feel like, going back to screens and all that stuff, I mean, like, you can you could spend an hour trying to figure out what you wanna watch on TV, you know? So, like, again, and if you are, like, looking for an exercise video to do, you can spend 30 minutes looking for, like, the perfect one instead of just being like, "Okay, this is what's served up, let's just go with it," you know? I mean, simpler times, we have a lot of great benefits of technology, but there are some times where I'm just like, I mean, popping in Jane Fonda, like way back in the day, again, dating myself, but like I did that same workout so many times. It was the only option, right?
Yep.
And it got it done, right? So anyway,
Yeah, and then the second major, takeaway or item you mentioned, so we talked about like the mentality and the mindset, and then the second thing you mentioned was like the strategy behind your goals, being strategic with your goals, right?
yeah,
And I was talking with a client actually sort of about this idea yesterday in the clinic, and maybe not strategy with the goals, but logistics around what she wants to be able to do and also what she wants to be able to do with her family. And the what we were talking about was them planning their family vacations around races or events and activities and things. And like they go to
mm,
different places every year, but she's going to do a race when they're in that city that they're visiting so that she can still do the things she wants to do and they can still get their family vacation in. What other things have you found, Dimity, that like life goes in seasons, right? And you had
yeah,
mentioned, if it's you're changing jobs, your husband's getting a promotion, or you're going through a divorce or a breakup, or your child's about to move off to college, that might not be the easiest time to
Mhm.
have like the biggest goal because there's a
Mhm.
lot of other things going on. What sort
Mhm.
of strategies or tips have you found to try and help people do that, to manage the logistics and, sort of strategize those things?
Well, so I think it's communication with your spouse or your partner is really important. Again, not to diss on husbands here because there are plenty of great husbands out there, but a lot of it is, if they are not athletes themselves, they might not understand what goes into training for a half marathon or a marathon, right? So, literally we say like on Sunday night or whenever you have like a little de facto family meeting, just sit down and go through your week, and just say, I'm going to need, you don't have to go through, I'm doing 4 miles a tempo on Tuesday. Like that doesn't matter, but I'm going to need, I'm going to need 4 hours on Saturday morning. What do you want to do this weekend? If you can give me 4 hours on Saturday morning, if you want to go hang with your buddies at the baseball field on Saturday night, awesome. So having those conversations, because that's, I think, where a lot of people, either assume that the other person knows what's going on, and it's just a lot of confusion and sometimes aggravation and resentment can come up. So that's the first thing I think.
Yeah.
The second thing is, again, being flexible. And so, it shouldn't always fall onto or if in an ideal case, it shouldn't always fall onto your spouse to be the quote unquote babysitter. And as you are not the babysitter either. But, so I mean, some ideas that women have done, like you can, you know, again, you kind of talked about your in-laws coming in or grandma coming in to babysit, like trade, right? Like my neighbor wants to go do a yoga class and I want to go for a run. I'll watch her kids while she watches mine. Or we've had people take their kids to the infield of a track, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
age dependent, right? But you can definitely do that and get a great workout in as you can watch them the whole time.
Yep.
So stuff like that. I'm trying to think about what other things like we recommend. It's interesting that you talk about racing, your client racing, and that's definitely kind of a hot topic around another mother runner with your family there, right? There are people who want, and it depends upon the race, like doing a 5K or a 10K or something that's not a huge energy investment and training investment is one thing. But traveling with your whole family to a marathon that you've been training for 20 weeks and often, again, just stereotypes, but it often falls to the female to figure out where they're going to eat and what the hotel reservations are and, all those things. And all of a sudden you are carrying all of the weight of what you do at home to your race
Yep.
and then going to run 26.2 miles. So, that's something that you have to kind of figure out. But I will say there's a lot of beauty in going by yourself or meeting a friend there and letting the family cheer you on from home or if it's a home race, obviously having them come to the sidelines or whatever. But just think about that wisely. I did one Ironman way back in the day. I knew I would do one. Again, talking about goals. It would always been a goal of mine, and I knew that my second kid had to be in school full time for me to do it because of the training load.
Yeah.
And I got on the plane. I did it in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and I got on the plane. I saw a friend who was also doing it, and she had her whole family there along with her two kids that were probably, I don't know, say 6 and 8. And after the race, she's like, I would have never brought my family with me. So and I'm not, no judgment either way. Do what feels best for you, but just consider the energy costs.
Yeah, no, 100%. And, just to be clear, this particular client that I was talking with, most of these races that she does on their family vacation trips are not massive ones that she put in like, tons of effort from a training
Yeah.
standpoint to run this PR. They are more the like fun variety, right? They wanted to
Yeah.
go to Disney, so she ran a race, or they want to go to wherever, and they build a vacation out of it. Because yeah, I think a lot of times, at least this is what I've found in in my family. And when I say my family in this context, I mean like the household I grew up in with my
Hmm.
parents and my siblings. My mom was always the one that's figuring out the logistics of where we're going to stay, what we're going to eat, what we need to bring, getting all the bags packed and stuff. And I know that is still part of what, from a mental stressor standpoint today, even stops her from being super consistent with exercise and things, is it's all the other mentally responsive like tasks
Sure.
that she's responsible for making these decisions. and it just really drains the time management bucket quite a bit.
Yeah, 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 for sure, for sure. But I totally applaud that, and I think it's also important for kids to see their moms doing cool things, for
Yeah,
kids to be exposed to running. I mean, all that. There's a lot of benefits too. It's just that that was like a red flag for me because I'm like, oh, whoa, don't go on a week vacation and run a marathon at the end with your
yeah.
kids. That's going to be hard.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, there was a question I had that was just sort of like slipping away from me, but what I would be curious to know, because I'm assuming that the people who are listening to this, have questions or have things in their life that they're dealing with. What are some of the other, I guess, questions you get or topics that end up getting discussed in the community? Another mother runner that you running like that people are struggling with.
One of our kind of hallmarks around AMR, another mother runner, is TMI, or too much information, as you probably know what that means. And again, this feels very like, oh, I walked 7 miles uphill both ways to school, like kind of thing, like back in the day. But when we started on Facebook in like 2010, right? I mean, and I didn't even want to have a Facebook account for AMR
Yeah.
because I was like, I just go there to like get jealous of other people's vacation photos. Like I don't need to be, spending more time on it. But what we did is we turned it in, going back to the community idea, we turned it into a community by like, so, what's your wife's name, Andrew?
Aaron.
Aaron. So say Aaron like wrote in, again, you could put things easily on pages back then. And Aaron wrote in and said, I just had a baby, I'm having problems breastfeeding, and but I really want to go for a run. Do you have any ideas? And we would put that again. So we would post that like Aaron's looking for ideas on how to integrate breastfeeding and training kind of thing.
Yeah.
And turn it out to people. And then people would then give all their ideas, right? And so they were validated with their ideas, and Aaron got a whole bunch of good ideas back
Mhm.
then. And so what we did is we have a thing still called TMI Tuesdays. And so we talk about, leaking when you're after having a kid, leaking and running is a huge, huge thing.
Absolutely.
Um, like hemorrhoids, what else? Well, breastfeeding and running for sure. I mean, pretty much anything from
Mhm.
chafing and pooping and peeing on the run. I mean, that's
Yeah.
another one. Like, how do you deal with that when you just have to go and you're in the middle of nowhere? So that is kind of, I mean, those kind of things that again, I feel like people talk about that now really easily, and I'm glad for that. I definitely feel like the more we can talk about the things we don't want to talk about, the easier it'll be, more solutions will present themselves. But a lot of it comes down to my body doesn't feel like it used to. It doesn't function as it used to. And so what are some ideas for me?
Yeah. Yeah, and I love the idea of, like, putting that out to the community, to the other people that are either A, dealing with the same thing you have, or B, already have dealt with that and found ways and strategies
Yeah.
to tackle that obstacle or address that, physical, issue that's going on. Like, my wife has been seeing one of our pelvic specialists at physio room, and she actually just told me yesterday that she had like a sneezing attack in the middle of the day. She sneezed like 5 times consecutively, and she was so proud that she did not leak and have any incontinence happen because it's a real thing. And at
Oh,
physio,
for sure.
we like to say that it's common, but it's not normal. Just because something happens for a lot of people doesn't necessarily make it normal, right? Like a lot of people have pain, but pain's not normal. It's just very common. So same thing with incontinence or whatever that might be after having kiddos. So yeah, I love that idea to just reach out, get the input from other people because it like you said, it makes you feel validated in what you're dealing with. You're not
Mhm.
alone. And then you might get a lot of potential solutions that you didn't even think of from someone else.
Oh, 100%. I mean, and people come up with the best ideas too, or they have the best ideas. And I mean, for Facebook, for all the, meta things and the bad stuff, that vibes that we talk about right now, like it definitely connects people, right? And it makes it is a beautiful tool. And we kind of going back to that community idea. I mean, we're mostly a virtual community, and motherhood is very, very isolating, especially when you are coming, if you have to, leave a job, take care of a kid, you're used to being out in the world. Running is a solo sport. And so things like social media for better or for worse, but I would say mostly for better. They connect us, and it is invaluable in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I think um, the ability to just be able to communicate and stay in touch or connect with people all around is obviously the best part about it, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you need people, real people in your life too, but especially when you're going through something and you're not going to want to talk to about your neighbor about the fact that, you're
Yeah,
leaking on your runs, but we'll talk about it.
yeah, yeah, I love that. Um, well, I guess what I would love to do is sort of like as we wind this conversation down is I guess ask you this. Do you find that and I'm sure there's a huge spectrum of this. Do you find that the majority of people in the AMR community are in a new parenthood situation, or there are people like yourself that have children that are grown up, older, or is it just all across the board?
I think our main audience is kind of, I would say, like 35 to 60.
Mhm.
We've done some surveys and stuff, and that's kind of what we found. That said, it is all across the board. I had coffee a couple weeks ago with this college student who
Yeah.
was a huge podcast listener and was just adorable. And I loved all her ideas and her energy and feedback. But then there are a lot of people that are on kind of our paths, Sarah and my paths, because they started with us when our kids were little, right? Their kids were little, and they found us and they found their tribe, right? And now they've grown up and, yes, there's a lot of like resonance as far as like kids going to college and knees not feeling as good as they used to, and goals going from getting PRs to getting a PR every decade, or running 50 half marathons and running a half marathon in every state and things like that, where you can adjust your goals appropriately for your age. So yeah, but for the most part, I would say we're kind of, we definitely have stroller pushers for sure. And we have a shirt that we sell that's called, it says badass grandmother runner.
Nice.
Um, yeah, because we have a badass mother runners kind of our, well, it used to feel bad, but now I feel like, it was like PG-13. Now it just feels like it's G compared to
Normal.
everything else
Yeah.
that's out there.
Part of every day. Well, what I think the last question that I would love to ask you, Dimity, is just because this is the phase that I'm in now, and many other
Yeah.
people in in my life and in my circles, so many of my friends have either had kids in the past few years or they're about to have kids. I think my wife and I just learned about two more people that we know that just found out they were pregnant.
Oh,
Is
wow.
what is a you know, what are some words of wisdom or words of advice that you would give the new mom or about to be a new mom who loves to continue being active, but their world is about to change a little bit? Like, what would you tell them if they were asking you for,
Yeah.
advice?
I would say, keep moving forward no matter what, whatever that looks like. It may be walking, after having a kid. It may be run walk. It may be 20 minutes. It may be 2 hours, but, keep your consistency and moving forward. And then just kind of be an advocate for yourself, right? Take what you need as far as time and, try to bring that self-care in as much as you can without, without disrupting everything. But don't be a martyr. Don't be like, oh well, my husband's gonna go for a run and then my kid needs to go to soccer. So what am I gonna do? I mean, that's another one. I should have thrown that out. So
Yeah.
many people run when their kids are at practice, right? On the soccer field, having a piano lesson, whatever it is, like that's another way to multitask and get it done. But as far as just, that's what I would say is just don't sacrifice yourself for your family, and just keep moving forward.
Yeah. And we could talk, all day about that fill your cup sort of mentality, right? And if
Yeah.
you can just find and make the way, make the time to be able to take care of yourself, ultimately you're going to show up better for your family, better for your kids, better for your spouse, better for your coworkers, and all this stuff. Anyways, even though sometimes it's going to feel like I just don't have time to do this, but if we take care of ourselves, we're ultimately going to be better off for those other people in our
Yeah.
lives,
Yeah.
regardless.
I had
Love
a
it.
boss once that said, that I really appreciated what she said. She was high, it was at a big magazine, and she said, you know, "I am not so important that I can't take an hour off to go
Mhm.
to the gym." right? And I think sometimes you get this like, oh, but I've got to get it done. I've got to get it done. And certainly there are times like that. But often, if you can kind of take a step back and say, okay, if I could go out for a half an hour walk, I don't even have to change my clothes. I'm going to come back and feel so much more focused instead of sitting here and kind of half doing my job. I think, you'd be surprised. So kind of, I like that idea a lot because I think there's some of us that feel like, "I've gotta get all these things done," like you were talking about your to-do list, and yes, you do, and yes, there's also space for you to exercise.
Yeah, and just to recap, one thing you said before is that like communication and planning with your spouse and not assuming that they know what your schedule is like and that they know what it is you want to do, and just like having that conversation and planning to support one another. And Aaron has been doing an awesome job of this and saying, like, hey, my friend and I, we want to go to the gym at 10 o'clock on Saturday. Like, what do
Mhm.
you want to get done this weekend?
Yeah,
Like, when can I be home to watch Aiden so that you can do the thing it is you want to do? And I think that is so important because whether it's at work, whether it's at home, if you just assume that people know what's going on in your head, that
yeah.
is going to lead to resentment and miscommunications and people getting frustrated for things that could have totally been avoided just if with a little planning and a little conversation about what it is you guys need to get done.
That's awesome you guys are doing that because just keep it up. That's the biggest thing is when it gets busier and when you have another kid and all the things, like, just keep it up because that's gonna make a big difference.
Well, thanks. I'll give her the kudos. She's doing a really good job of it, and I'm just
Good.
following her lead. Um, but this has been awesome, Dimity. I think this conversation hopefully was very real for a lot of people. I think there are plenty of people that are listening to this, whether they have kids or not. Everyone, we all have 24 hours in the day, and it never feels like enough time. So
Yeah,
I think just remembering, to keep moving forward and just not I love what you just said. Like, I'm not so important I can't take an hour to myself to like get the workout
yeah,
in or whatever, right?
yeah,
Is a
yeah.
great mentality to live by. But I want to make sure people know, we'll put these in the show notes, of course, but where can people find you guys? Where can people find the AMR community, or
Yeah.
they want to check out one of your books? Where can people find those things?
Well, so it's anothermotherrunner.com. We are the Mother Runner on Instagram and Another Mother Runner on Facebook. Yeah, we're still on Facebook. We haven't done TikTok yet. I don't know. It's like a bridge too far for us right now. And then our books are, we talked a lot about Run Like a Mother. We also have a book called Train Like a Mother, which is more about racing. And then we have a book called Tales from Another Mother Runner, which is a bunch of essays from a variety of women all about different aspects of running.
Cool. Awesome. Well, we'll put those things for you guys in the show notes. I encourage you to go hop on their site, give them a follow on the social medias, check out their podcast, and hopefully you guys are able to connect with that community and find some people that are dealing with the same things you're dealing with so that you guys can tackle them and accomplish them together. Timothy, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. I really appreciate your time. I think this was an awesome conversation.
Thank you. It was really fun, Andrew, and good luck with everything.
Thank you so much. All right, you guys, everyone that tuned in to listen to us today on the code, thank you so much for your time. And if you've listened to other episodes, you've heard me say this before, but we are trying to get this podcast out to more and more people. So if you've not done so already, please go drop a review, whether that's on Spotify or Apple or however you're listening to this. We're trying to get to 200 5-star reviews. So if you've not done that already, do it now. And whether it's your first episode or your 100 and plus episode, we'll catch you on the next episode of The Code. Thank you so much, guys.